All right, everybody, welcome back to the power of leveraging your story selling in your business interview series. I am distracted by Rachel's amazing hair today. This is Rachel Pedersen. For those of you who don't know, she is the queen of social media and is joining us here today. Thank you so much for being here, Rachel.
Of course I'm here, Yada. You are one of my favorite people in the whole world, and I only say that to about 20 people. So, yes.
Well, and I wore my SMU I'm the Boss t-shirt for you because I'm the boss, and it's one of my favorite t-shirts.
It's so comfortable, and it's a conversation starter. Everywhere I go, I'm like, ooh. And obviously, what does that open up? An opportunity to talk about our stories.
Right, right. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about what it is that you do? How did you become the queen of social media? And you have to explain what's up with your amazing hair today.
We should probably do that first so that everyone's not like, this is really uncomfortable. Did Rachel get a perm? So I just got back from Jamaica, from an amazing conference in Jamaica. And on the last day, I got the Jamaican braids, which I always said I wasn't going to get them. But I thought, you know what, this will be really fun. I can create some TikToks and videos with these braids. I think they're fun. I always think of like Monica on Friends when she's like whipping her braids back and forth. And then I took it out because I wanted to look professional for this interview. Yes. So we've got professional post-Jamaica hair going on here. I'm Rachel Pedersen. So happy to be here. Some people call me the queen of social media. I don't hate that. I actually think it's awesome. So my story began it actually began about 7 years ago, when I was a single mom on welfare with my daughter, Dakota. And kind of for us, it was crazy because we were in such a survival mode that it was hard to think or dream about any other possibility. And I really, really fought to just keep going forward, to become a hairstylist, believe it or not. To become a hairstylist, I literally took a bus an hour and a half each way every single day because I didn't have a car. There was one winter where our heat was actually turned off and we had to bundle up in wool blankets and wool socks and, crowd around these kerosene heaters that we had in our basement. And that was a point in my life where I was like, I never am going to allow myself to be here again, ever.
You're in Minnesota during this. It's not like a tepid winter.
No, we have temperatures of -10, -20 degrees Fahrenheit, which is very, very cold for anyone who is not familiar with our weather. So it was a really, really challenging time in our lives. And then about 5.5 years ago, I met my husband, Paul. And there was something so crazy because I met him and I suddenly just felt safe. For the first time in my life, I was like, I feel safe. And for anyone wondering why, was he super rich or something? Is that why you felt safe all of a sudden? He was a window washer. We didn't have much, but I just knew this is the man I'm going to raise my kids with, and we're going to have a family, and we're going to build our lives together. And so I didn't want to waste time. The moment I met him, I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. And thankfully he felt the same way, or else I would have just been a crazy. And look at me, I'm crazy. He felt the same way, and he said it first, and I was like, okay, let's just do this. Let's go and take on life together. So 13 days after we met, we got married legally, and, in front of not a judge, but someone at one of those kiosks at the Mall of America, the Chapel of Love. And we started on our journey of love and a whole life together. And then it was 3.5 years ago that I got these kind of pangs of I'm not there yet. There's something I need to do. There's something I need to build. I want to spend more time with my family. I want to be free. And so I started building a business of working with clients in social media. And I didn't know everything. I didn't know a lot. I just knew that I could help some people with social media. So we started building this. 6 months later, we replaced my income completely with clients on the side. So I left my 9-to-5. A few months later, I replaced Paul's income and brought him home. And we've set out building a business and a life that we absolutely love ever since.
Wow. Wow. So so many questions, right? How, because, and I know a little bit of the backstory on this story, how did you go from being a hairdresser to being a social media manager, essentially, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So one day, one of my clients came in and I was doing her highlights, and she said, my husband bought this little chicken company. Do you think you could help me? Can you show me your tweeter? And I was like, sorry, What?
You're like, I don't show anything.
I was like, don't say that to anyone. That sounds really inappropriate. And I was like, are you talking about Twitter? Like, and she's like, yes, that's what it is. And so in that moment, I realized I don't know a lot. I don't have a degree in marketing. I don't have experience in marketing, but I know enough that I can help her. So why not? And so I went to their house that weekend, started helping them with their marketing. And by some crazy, weird stretch of fate, I got a job in a marketing agency shortly thereafter. And I remember in my interview process, they're like, do you write good copy? And this is so bad. I don't recommend anyone ever do this unless you can follow through. They're like, do you write good copy? And I was like, yes, the best copy. And on the way home, I'm like, what's copy? And I'm like looking on YouTube, trying to figure out what copy was. But I did learn. And I was like, no, I think I can write great copy. Mm-hmm. And so I did write great copy for that agency, thankfully, or else I would have just been a fraud. Right. But that was kind of like my first big leap. And then from there, after working at that agency, I was like, I think I can do it more seriously. There it was just an email lead generation company. And I was like, I want to be more creative. I want to try, creating graphics and putting together strategies, not just writing copy for emails to generate leads in a mass manner. And so I went and applied for this job opportunity at an Inc. 5000 tech company. And it was a marketing manager job. And I was so, I don't know what it's called when you're you're kicking outside of your coverage or something. But I went for it and they were like, you know what? We want to hire you. You're not qualified, but we believe that you can take us to the next level. And so I did.
That's so crazy. It's interesting to me to hear like the progression of like, I'm enjoying social media and I think I'm good at it for me. And then, well, I know more than she does, so I should be able to help her. And then just these leaps kept happening where you're like, oh no, like this is really my thing. Like this is what I do. Like what was that process like for you? Just like following that, like the call, I guess.
It was so interesting. I love that question because I remember being like, I want to be an expert. There's something that's sparking a new level of passion in me. And it's a passion I've only had for a few things in my life. Hair was one of them, but there are certain things about that industry that are really hard for me. And honestly, like the beauty industry has its own, flaws and failures. And I just didn't want to play the beauty industry game. So as I was jumping into marketing, I was like, this is sparking a fire in me. Like I am alive doing this. And as I started working with clients, I remember just this feeling of like, oh, I want to master this. I want to be so good at this. I want to be able to put together a campaign and have people talk about it and put together something that moves the needle for a business. So it wasn't like that in the beginning. When I first started working with clients, I just remember this deep-seated dissatisfaction with where we were at. And I was like, I am committed to understanding and mastering social media marketing and consequently marketing as a whole. So I literally committed myself to just learning, and I spent hours, and I still spend hours every single day reading books about marketing and social media, reading books about attention and copy and graphics and, psychoanalytics and psychographics and all of this crazy stuff. I'm like, I love this because it helps me to master this craft that I'm obsessed with.
Well, and I think that the other side of that is like the personal development aspect of it, right? Because it's one thing to grow your marketing knowledge and your like all these different technical skills, but then there's like the tool of you, because like you've got to get yourself over all of these humps, right? Where it's like, oh, that's a challenge, that's an obstacle, that's a stopping point. Like, what do I do? And that's where the internal work comes in. Like, have you found that that's true for you too?
Oh, without a doubt. And you already knew the answer to that because
I'm like,
that's the answer for everybody. You have to work on yourself. I will say that there's a huge part of me that's like the girl that pulls herself up by her bootstraps and is like, I don't see the big vision, but I'm just going to go and I'm just going to take action every day. I'm going to learn every day. I'm going to show up and do these things that I know have a predictable outcome. I don't know if it's going to pay off, but then there's another side of me that's always working on like mindset and creating big goals and this massive vision and seeing how everything comes together. And it's almost like two different identities. I'm sometimes in that the girl who gets stuff done mode, get her done. And then sometimes it's like, okay, now we really have to work on the mindset of the visionary who comes in and says, I see big things for all of this.
Yeah, even though I don't know exactly how. That's the other girl's job.
Exactly. She handles the get her done. She puts her boots up. So
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. And I think I think one of the things that I most admire about you is the fact that, and I think we were having this conversation the other day, it's like there's this part of you that's just so willing to put yourself out there, like with your crazy hair, right? Which I think actually looks great now that I'm used to it. I'm like, oh, look at her hair. Like with
cool.
with the crazy hair, with the TikTok videos, with the like posts, and like just how silly you and your husband are with each other, and like you and Marley, your best friend, right? And it's like there is so much of you out there that I think a lot of people would be like, I would never do that, but they can't stop watching either, right? And so there's this spark about you. Tell us about that. Like, how has that been, like sharing that part of yourself with people?
I'll be totally honest, that was a really hard part of me to show consistently. And, it goes back to like my own programming or my own beliefs that I have to seem like this uber professional in a blazer, super nice office girl or woman, I guess, when I look at myself, I feel like, okay, I watch Legally Blonde and that feels like me. She's bubbly, she's goofy, she's fun. That's really like the core of who I am. And yes, I can absolutely be the blazer wearing professional girl who can put together an amazing presentation, and I can be very serious and analytical. But the core of who I am is so goofy. And you know this because you've spent time with me. It's the truest and freest part of myself. And putting that out there was definitely, and still is, very vulnerable, because I recognize there are probably people who are going to be like, this girl is really stupid. Like, she obviously has no depth. There's no way she can handle a lot of money with Facebook ads, or any way that she can handle marketing strategy. But confidence in my own abilities and my team's abilities allows me to say, you're right. If you believe that, I'm not going to argue with you. Other people are going to see that I know how to get eyeballs and I know how to capture a voice with social media. So honestly, Yada, it is vulnerable, and it's something I choose to be vulnerable with every single day, putting the silliest part of myself out there, knowing it's not going to be for everyone.
Yeah, and it's so funny because that's been a theme through everybody that I've talked to. It's like it's okay, like that's not your person, right? Like if they're turned off by the thing that you're doing, by the message that you're putting out there, by the content that you're creating, like that's not your person. And I think instead of like fighting for every single person to be our person, or to like mold ourselves into who we think people want us to be, it's like just show up authentically as you, like with your backstory, with your quirks, with your silliness, with your seriousness too, and allow the people that are going to fall in love with that part of you to actually be your person, right?
I agree with that 100%. And there have been times where potential clients have come to me and they're like, I need to see that you can put on the pedigree, like you need to come to us with a blazer and, Times New Roman font size 12, this, and this. And it's okay for me to be like, listen, that's just not who I am. And I don't ever want you to feel like who I am on social media is so incongruent with the person that you get, that it wouldn't be a service to you and it wouldn't be a service to me to pretend to be that.
It's so funny, and it may be off topic, but I think it's relevant. When I met James, I was like going through my divorce, and it was like a part of my life where I realized that I was people pleasing to the max, right? So like I was being a different version of myself with every person that I encountered, and it caused my world to like fall apart. And I remember having a conversation with him where I was like, my biggest goal right now is to be who I am, regardless of who's in front of me. And it was something that I worked towards so diligently for so long. And I think today, like, I actually embody that. Like, I am on social media who I am when you meet me, who I am in my writing, who I am on my videos. Yes. And it's such a freeing feeling to just be like, oh, this is me. And it's okay. Like, it's okay to like show up with your makeup done, not done, with your hair done, with your hair not done. Like, and that, yeah, like I love that about you. It's just like, you're like, hey, this is where you caught me. Like my hand is maybe broken, maybe not, or like, I'm like, yeah, like I'm like lovey-dovey with my husband, or like I'm being silly with my kids, or I'm being super professional at a conference, or I'm on stage. Like this is like what you see is what you get. And it's almost this, this level of like self-acceptance that just like carries through all of your messaging, which I think is so cool.
I appreciate that so, so much. And one of the things it's definitely taught me is that I never want to make people feel bad for being the freest, truest version of who they are, but you also can't put that in a box because like I've seen really goofy sides of you. And if I were to be like, oh, that's all that there is to Yada, I'm limiting and putting you into a box that isn't fair either.
Mm-hmm.
There's multiple not personalities, that sounds so like terrible. There are multiple like identities and modes for each of us. You know, who I am with a mom is very different than who I am with my team versus who I am with clients. They're all still very authentic to who I am, but that doesn't mean just because someone's silly that they can't be incredibly intelligent.
Yeah, no, I
I'm talking about myself, like, you know, just because I'm silly doesn't mean I'm not super smart, you know?
Yeah. Or like, yeah, no, it's crazy, but I kind of think of us people in general as like a little diamond, right? And as you shift a diamond, like there's different facets of it, and you see the part that is like hitting the light in that moment, but all of it is what makes up the whole, right? Okay, cool. So now we got into like crazy personal development talk, which is awesome. This is my narwhal, by the way.
Oh,
and it smells like grape. It makes me happy. Okay, so we talked about personal development and like how being the truest self, your truest self, is actually what is most magnetic to people. Can you tell us a little bit about like the science or the psychology, what you've discovered about that in your work?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think something that's so important to remember is like, especially for personal brands, you have to decide, like, am I going to be someone that's similar to who I am? Am I going to create a caricature? Am I going to be similar to the character of me with my kids or with my husband or with my friends? And it does need to stem from who you are, one of those identities at least, but it doesn't have to be exactly the same. Now, when I say that, what I mean is that there has to be a congruency on some level. I'm sure most people watching this have been like, oh, I saw someone on a video and then I met them in person and they were totally different and it caught me off guard. And I oftentimes think of like Jim Carrey and how suddenly he was like, you can either, you know, you become somebody for Hollywood and for the public, and you either strip that back and repeal it and break everyone's trust, or you die as that person that people want you to be. And he decided to go completely against it, hence his unraveling, which is not always a bad thing, by the way. Right. But the more congruent you are with your public facing persona to who you truly are, the easier it is for people to accept you when they meet you outside of the context of the stage, the video, the online persona. And so I think sometimes we sense those incongruencies in other people and we don't quite know what it is, but we're like, something's a little bit off. It doesn't feel like I can trust that person. And it might be that we can't trust that person, but it might be that who they've created as a character to face the world is not who they really are. And our subconscious sense that incongruency, that kind of, I guess it's like a dissonance inside of who they are. Right. So I've personally chosen to derive the Rachel Pedersen character very closely from who I am, or very closely to who I am intentionally, so that I am the same on stage as I am in person.
So how do you help somebody who's kind of gone the opposite direction and put out a caricature or a persona of themselves that they have to like try to be? Because I think that that's where we meet a lot of people, right? Where it's like, I'm tired of having to show up this way, or like, I don't feel free to like say the things that I really want to say or express the, like what's really happening inside. Like, how do you help someone come back from that?
You know, it's so funny because we're so privileged to have friends and peers in our network where we've seen them pull back the layers. We've seen this happen. And I think it's done very beautifully when you face it head on with the story. Now, I think it can be confusing and messy if you start to reveal that before you've finished the journey. Like once you've finished the journey, I think it's great to be like, listen, guys, I want to take you on this journey because I want to discover who I am. You know, you would very rarely take someone else on your eat, pray, love journey, even though I've never done that because I guess I got married young. I had kids young. Maybe that'll happen in my 50s. I don't know. Maybe it'll happen with Paul. We're going to have so much fun across, you know, in other countries. But I think that happens. And then you come back to people with the story once you have the gift in it, and be like, I want to share with you guys the journey I've been going through over the last year. I think it's difficult to show someone a before picture without showing them the after and giving them the gift that you found along the way. I used to kind of joke, and this is really true, like if you put up a before picture without an after, it's just a fat picture. Like, does that make sense? Like, you would never put up a before picture and not have an after picture coming. So the more that you can close that loop for other people and say, I've already found the gift in this, I invite you to join me on this journey of being real. It's so beautiful, and it frees other people. So it's not a bad thing. It can feel a little bit vulnerable, but I think that it's one of the greatest gifts you can give to your followers as soon as you can possibly recognize who I'm putting out there is not congruent with who I am. And it's time for me to go on that journey and come back with a gift.
So have you ever, and I know I've like, I'm thinking of a couple people who I used to do this a lot, where it's like, it's almost like the pendulum is swinging, right? Like they're like, we're going to be vulnerable. We're going to be real. Oh, just kidding. Like we're going to be super fake and what we think that you need us to be. And then it kind of eventually gets to this like middle ground. And I think that that's a little bit of the journey that I even went on, because it was like, I'm going to share everything about my divorce. And then I was like, no, just kidding. I don't want to say anything. And so I would have this like back and forth until I finally realized, and I think this is the key, that I could use my story in a way that was to serve other people rather than to be self-serving. I think that was like the main distinction for me, because I think for a while it was like almost like a showy, like, look, I can talk about hard things and then have like this vulnerability hangover, right? And I was like, oh, I can't believe I said that. And then it would go back and forth until I was finally like, okay, when the opportunity presents itself and I feel like this is needed in order to serve somebody else or to help them come to an epiphany or like an understanding or an aha, then I can pull out my story. It's like part of my toolkit, if that makes any sense. Is that kind of how you approach it too?
Oh, absolutely. I've found for myself even that if I share something with vulnerability before I'm ready, and I'm doing it because, I don't know, some speaker on stage is like, get vulnerable. And I'm like, okay. And then I share all the vulnerable. I'm like, now I have to retreat because, oh my gosh, I overshared and I don't want people to know that. Now they're judging me and I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
We don't have to do that extreme in order to serve people with our story. And so I believe that what you do is you just honestly feel in your gut, in your heart, I feel like this message is going to serve somebody. Mm-hmm. If you're sharing any story from a place of this makes me look good, cool, polished, like I've got it all together, like I don't have it all together. If you're doing it to posture, that's one thing. When you find that like grounded middle and you're like, I feel comfortable sharing this now, and I feel like this is going to serve somebody, that's where the best shares come from.
I love that. I love that you just said that. Okay, so talk to me about like the guru influencer / like person on the mountain that like knows everything. Because I don't know about you, but like I am kind of anti that. Like I want, like if somebody puts me on a pedestal, I'm immediately like climbing off of it because I'm like the only way that I have to go is down, right? And so I'm very much about standing shoulder to shoulder with my audience and being like, listen, I'm really good at these 4 things, but other than that, like it's a hot mess, right? Like I need help. And I think I look to every single person that I meet as like, hey, what are your 4 things, right? Like, what are you really good at? And I know everybody has something to teach me. So how do you help people process that whole, like, I want to be a guru, I want to be an influencer. What does that really look like for me? And how do you keep them real?
Oh my gosh. I'll never forget one thing that Stacy Martino said to me when we were on the yacht cruise mastermind thing, which sounds super cool. It was really cool. My hair wasn't this cool, but it was pretty cool. Because I spilled coffee all across my white pants.
Before your photo shoot.
Very visibly stained. I spill on everything always. And I was like, oh, I got to go change because so-and-so and so-and-so are coming and I don't want them to see me like with stains all over my pants. She said, stop. You don't need to change anything. You showing up exactly as you are now gives other people permission. And so it's something that I've had to like recondition in my brain. Show up as you are. Like show up with no makeup if that's how you are that day. Show up with that cold sore, show up with that zit on your face, like just show up. And the more that we try to not posture ourselves, it gives people permission to be real. And so like part of me wanted to like hide what just happened. And I was like, no, I'm going to leave it, because you know what? This is exactly how my hair is right now. It was this or the Jamaican braids, which does nobody a service, except for my TikTok followers. But honestly, like the more that you try to not posture and look like you have it all figured out or pretend you have it all figured out, the more that it serves others and allows them to feel comfortable with who they are.
Yeah, I so love that. And it's funny, I've gone through my own process with that.
Yep.
It's like there's been times where for a while I was doing a video a day in like this group that I was running, and it was like I hadn't had my hair done and I had gray hair, and I was like, no, like you're doing a video. And then I would go through phases where I wouldn't even dye my hair, because I was like, if you have an issue with this, like you need to get over it, because this is who you actually are, right? And like getting my eyelashes done, not getting my eyelashes done,
Yes.
getting my nails done, not getting my nails done, like gaining weight, losing weight, like why? Like I'm always digging for the motivation of like, why am I doing the things I'm doing? Is it because I think that I have to, or I think that I should, or because it truly brings me joy, right? Like like, and probably you're the same way. Like there's a part about getting yourself ready and done up that is enjoyable for you. And you're like, yeah, like I want to look that part, right? But I don't want to do it 24/7. And I need to be okay with the days that I don't, where it's just like, I'm no less worthy on the days that I don't do it versus the days that I do. I'm just simply showing a different facet of myself and like being okay in that too.
Yeah, I think one of the big things for me is like if I have a day where I'm fresh faced and my skin is glowy and I don't have makeup on, that's a day where I'm like, you know what? I'm going to show up like this because I love who I am today.
Yeah.
But there are days where, you know what? A little bit of mascara and eyebrows makes me feel better.
Yeah.
And it's not about anybody else. It's only about meeting the highest version of myself.
Yeah.
And so some days that's a girl with no makeup on. Like in Jamaica, there was a dinner where I just gotten a facial. So my skin was glowing. I felt beautiful. And I went to dinner with no makeup on. And that felt so right for me. Now, one thing that's really interesting is for those of us who are like on video and on camera and on stages quite a bit, oftentimes we feel better with a little or a lot of makeup and hair and like a nice wardrobe, but it's because camera doesn't pick you up the way that you feel you are. Like I will say camera does some really mean things to skin and to eyes and to hair. That's a different process. Like my makeup on camera is very different than my day-to-day normal. Yeah. And so I just am literally like, what feels right for me today? And I'm going to love that version of myself and not make any apologies.
I love it. I love it. And I think it's such a relevant topic to stories, because these are the stories of our lives. Right. And it's like, and I think a lot of the question that I get a lot is like, yeah, like nothing really cool happens in my life. Like I don't have any content. Like I don't have a rags to riches, or I don't know what stories to tell. And I'm like, it's stuff like this, right? It's like, do I do my hair? Do I not do my hair? Am I going to wear makeup? And am I not going to wear makeup? And if you're a guy, it's like, well, what, like maybe it's your physical body, right? That you're like, oh, like I'm working out, and like, why are you doing those things? Like, what are the thoughts? Like people want to get clued in on the thought process, like the ahas, the epiphanies that you're having in your life, because they're somewhere along the journey. Like all of the people that you're helping in Social Media United, all of the people that you're helping through all your different programs and your masterminds are somewhere along the journey that you've just gone through, right?
Yeah.
And they're looking to you.
And one of the things that I think is so important is that like, you can find stories everywhere. You can find stories all around you. It doesn't happen when you sit on your couch watching Netflix, which by the way, I love watching Netflix and I will never apologize for that. Some people are like, you can't build a business and watch TV. And I'm like, watch me. Yeah. So I watch TV. I like video games, but that doesn't mean I don't work hard. However, when you go to Starbucks, what happens when you ask a question to the person who's taking your order, or you compliment someone, or you're open to stories that are all around you just waiting to introduce themselves to you. Mm-hmm. So if you ever feel like your life is boring, then it's time to take the pressure off yourself and start talking to other people. That's one of my favorite ways. And I'll share one example of that. We do, family runs to Target, which when you have 3 kids, and one is 11 months old and one is, 8 and one is 4.
Always a story.
There's always a story in and of itself right there. Like, just watch for the story. Like the story about where your son took off his diaper and suddenly is booking it through Target. That one hasn't happened to me yet, but I'm waiting for it. So like, that's an amazing story, like find the story and find the gift in it. But I'll never forget one time we went to Target, and this was the reminder to me that there's always a funny story, an interesting story, an odd story that's waiting for you. And we walked into Target, and Dakota was walking in front of Paul and I, and a man walking in front of her stopped and farted in her face. And she was right at that level. And it was the funniest moment of our lives. Like, we still laugh when we think about it as a family. And I'm like, whoa, that could have been a moment where we were like, are you kidding me? Like, what is wrong with him? But instead, we all fell to the ground laughing and couldn't get it together. And I realized, like, wow, that's a fun story. Where can we tie this in somewhere? So open yourself to stories, because I guarantee you they're everywhere around you.
Yeah, I tell everyone, I'm like, as long as you're living your life, like, there is a story to be told.
Yes.
It's a matter of finding it. I love that you say stay open to the story, and like, it's waiting to meet you, because it 100% is.
Yes.
All right, Miss Rachel, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. And for anybody who wants to follow you, tell us where they can find you, where they can connect with you.
Absolutely. You can find me on my website at rachelpedersen.com, and it's all E's and a D in my last name, or on any social media platform. My favorite is TikTok, the Mrs. Pedersen, all E's and a D in my last name. And I'm about to go film a Lady Marmalade video pretending to be Christina Aguilera. So we got to do that today.
I can't wait to see it. All right, Rachel, thank you so much for spending time with us, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good.
Bye. Oh, crap.